I am Leswell Williams. I thank you very much for joining us for our program today. Today we'll be having a very healthy discussion on aspects within the agricultural sector. And we will be having a discussion on praedial larceny, dog attacks, which are really considered disincentives to the agricultural sector, affecting many farmers, affecting livelihoods, affecting the economy, and so on. And additionally, we will speak to public health issues relating to the slaughtering of animals within the Bastille Valley area. I have with me officials within the Department of Agriculture, and also I have with me Mr. Lyndon David, who is Superintendent of Police, and he will deal with the aspect of the law, especially with respect to these praedial larceny, dog attacks, and things like that, what is being done. So, Mr. David, Superintendent, welcome.
Thank you very much, Lezoy, and good day to everyone.
I additionally have with me Mr. Glenville Leader, and Mr. Leader is the Deputy Chief Environmental Officer within the Ministry of Health. Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
And I have with me Delisha Huggins, who is the Livestock Extension Officer at the Department of Agriculture. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Right. I thank all three of you for coming today to share with the public very important information with respect to the law, with respect to public health, and with respect to what is happening within the agricultural sector. And all three of those things will come together in a melting pot, really. They are connected. Of course, we know that there's a saying that one man sows and waters, and another man comes and reaps. But while that might be applicable to certain situations, it is really unfair to farmers who work very hard, planting their crops, nurturing them, and all of that, and in one night, everything is gone. It's not fair. So, Delisha, I want to ask you, of course we speak about dog attacks and praedial larceny and so on. Dog attacks, what is the level that we have of dog attacks, especially on small ruminants? And what is the effect that it is having on livestock production, meat production?
The level of dog attack is very high. I am the extension officer that is currently responsible for species. In the past, we would have done districts, and just recently we decided to take a new approach at the department and have each extension officer being responsible for a species. So I was tasked with small ruminants, and upon taking up that task and having dialogue with the farmers, this praedial larceny and dog attacks were the number one problem. All the farmers, every area of St. Kitts you go into, the farmers are crying out. And so I decided to engage Dr. Henry and try to get a panel together to address it and also to educate the public about the process what can be done in terms of the police and different aspects of it. So it's also about educating the farmers about addressing the matters. So it's very high. It affects us in meat production, because if you have a farmer with 100 animals and a dog goes in, or while grazing, a dog kills 10 of those animals, it significantly affects production, because then the animals most often is pregnant animals. So that's not one, that could be at least 3 animals. So then that farmer know where he might slaughter 10, he can't slaughter 10 because he lost a significant amount of animals or number of animals. So it affects, in that way, it affects the availability of mutton, local mutton on the market, which is something that at the department we are trying to push. It affects farmers, of course, their pockets. It affects their pockets, it affects their livelihoods, because they don't have that money, that the income they would make from that selling of those animals is significantly reduced, because they can't make that money. So it is a serious problem, and farmers are discouraged. I am trying to do one thing. Farmers are discouraged because of that reason, because if I'm saying go into it full time and they're being affected by dog attacks and praedial larceny, they cannot live, they cannot make an income to sustain them and their families. So it's a matter that it's burning, and I'm trying to get some relief for the farmers by bringing awareness and also educating them about what they can do, the process, how to address, how they can handle when these attacks occur, when theft and dog attacks occur, how we can go about addressing them in a meaningful way, and kind of try to reduce the incidence of those.
Yes, it is really discouraging for the farmers, especially to have dogs attack their animals, and also for people to come and what we call the thief what is not theirs. Some of them consider that they're only taking up, but they're not taking up. You're stealing, because it is something that you did not work hard to produce. You did not come and ask, but yet you come and you take, which is definitely wrong. And as you said, it affects farmers because it affects their livelihoods, it affects their pockets. It is also a disincentive to them. And additionally, it affects the country on a whole. It affects the country, it extends to the country, because it simply means that there would be less of the meat and crops and vegetables and all of these kinds of things for people to buy. Now, Delisha, we have the problem, but we have to look for a solution. So what measures really has the department put in place to mitigate this problem?
At the department level, we are encouraging farmers and assisting with materials to construct proper housing. A lot of the attacks occur in the night when the animals are going home, or they're already at home and everybody's sleeping. These dogs, they have to feed, they attack. So I'm saying, if you construct a proper housing where the animals can be locked up, and not just in a pen, and yes, it's costly, but that is one way. There's also some partnering with Ross University, where we have these spay and neuter programs to cut down the population of the animals, because a lot of times we have people who own animals. They're cute and when they're small, but after they would have grown, they're no longer interested in owning the animals, and they go off and they dump the animal somewhere, and that animal, of course, mates, and we have the population increasing. So we have there's the spare and neuter programs at Ross University, and we also encourage the farmers to graze shorter times, and most importantly, try grazing with your animals. When the animals are out, be in a position to go and graze. A dog is less likely to attack when someone is around that can probably defend the animals. So those are measures that we are taking at the department.
Right. So you have wild dogs. Dogs that are wild, dogs that are all up and down the place, and they are wreaking havoc on people's livestock and livelihood. Now, while you may speak in terms of what the farmers can do in terms of protecting their animals, something has to happen in terms of the dogs as well. What do you do to those dogs? And is it okay for dogs to be just running up and down the place? They have no owner. Nobody owns them.
Yeah, but...
and then because nobody's going to come and take responsibility, and nobody's going to say, well, oh, this was my dog. They will be very quick to disassociate themselves from that dog. Because then it means then that they would have to incur some sort of a cost for the damage that their dog did.
But the farmers are taking their own measures, and it's not one that I would encourage, but farmers would often tell you, you know, any dog they catch in the pen, what they would do with it. I don't necessarily like that method. It's something that it's not the best method, but I can relate and understand the anger and the pain that these farmers endure. But it's about, I think a lot of it has to do with education, about properly educating persons who are interested in buying animals, pets, you know, that they understand that this is a lifelong commitment. These aren't children that would eventually grow up and get a job. If you buy a dog, you own that dog and you're responsible to care and feed that dog. And I think a lot of it has to do with education. Like I said, we have back at the department where you, at Limekeel, where you can, if you own an animal and you no longer wish to own that animal, you can surrender the animal if you're unable to care for it. But as you may know, guess that they're always full. So it's about putting our heads together to find ways, you know, that we can address, good ways, I mean, less harmful ways that we could address. So I am starting with the education first, and then as we go along at the department, along with Dr. Henry, we'll brainstorm as to see, of course, with the input of the farmers, how best we can serve them in this aspect of that.
Yes, the problem of dogs and dogs, you know, damaging animals, livestock, is only one problem. Dogs are wreaking a lot of havoc in other places. I remember for a period of time I kept coming home, and every time I come home I find all these shoes in my yard. And I am wondering where these shoes coming from. And apparently it is a dog in the area who is taking people's shoes and dragging them and bringing them in my yard. So you see the problem. And additionally, you see that they're going into garbage bins and pulling out the garbage, and they're strewn all over the street and so on. And apart from it being unsightly, it also creates a public health. It's a public health issue. Now, Delisha, in terms of praedial larceny, let's in terms of crops and so on, let's look a little bit at that. We spoke about the livestock, but in terms of crops, could you tell us what is happening there?
Praedial larceny is basically theft, like you would have explained earlier, theft of agricultural produce. We have instances where just yesterday, while I was out doing extension, a farmer was telling me he went to his field and there's a gentleman there with a bag of his yams. He just went and, removed the yams and have the bag of yams going with it. And it might sound funny because how the farmer tends to talk, it would make you instantly laugh, but I mean, it can become very violent, these situations, and it's reaching a point because of COVID and we are now trying to secure our food. It's reaching a point where people are at their wits' ends and feels like there is no alternative. And the farmer was saying all what he would do with the gentleman. So we're trying to avoid that, but I don't know if it's because of, like I said, the COVID situation and times are getting harder, people want to eat. We have to look into these things because it's not one farmer, it's not happening in one area, it's a widespread problem and it affects everybody. It's not one farmer is going to say, okay, I went there yesterday, he told me that. But then you go somewhere else and somebody's going to tell you the same thing, somebody else. So we are having it in both, in crops and in livestock. But we know we have to take a more serious approach to it because food security, I mean, we all, 2020, we all were at home and the thoughts were, what if the boats can't come? How are we going to feed ourselves? So it's becoming a more serious problem. So just as in animals, but I think it will happen more in crops because the crops don't make noise. The crops are easier to transport. So it's a problem we're having all over, and we are starting to take a more serious approach and kind of educate the public as to what to do and not to take matters in your own hands. But let us at the department have some kind of conversation about that.
I know that the farmers, they should not take matters into their own hands. At the very same time, people must be principled. And the fact of the matter is that something is not yours and you should not take it without permission. Because what you're doing is that the farmer has worked very hard, put in hours of work, laborious work, done his or her, that is the only means sometimes of income. And you come, and without a thought of all of that, just thinking of yourself, just go and steal their crops. It can't be right. And, I think more measures, and I think the law has to place greater emphasis and focus on praedial larceny and implement strategies to tackle the problem. That leads me to the superintendent. Superintendent, we have a lot of dogs up and down the place. We have a lot of cats too, but the dogs are more. The dogs are more of a problem. What is really going on in relation to dogs? Because they're dangerous, because they're hurting livestock. And they're attacking not just animals, even though we mention animals, they're also attacking people as well and affecting people. So what is being done?
Once we look at the Dog Act, the Dog Act is saying that persons should license their dog if you have up to 5 dogs, you should have a kennel in which to put the dogs. It also specified what would be dangerous dogs, and it has a list of dangerous dogs. But what I would like to say to persons regarding dangerous dog is where once the dog attacks a human being or another animal, it will then be deemed dangerous. And the person who is injured does not have to prove a previous propensity in the dog. So the owner will be liable. And the liability, will come through civil suits and so forth. However, there are also some criminal aspects where you fail to secure the dog properly. And those are the areas that we are encouraging persons to keep their dog safe, put them in a pen, keep chains on them. If you're taking them out in a public space and you know that it will bark or lunge at somebody, put a muzzle on the dog's mouth. However, it's best you leave it home. The other day I was walking and I saw a young man, could be a pit bull, but the dog looked very strong. And he's just reeling and pulling back and the dog pulling him. And I'm saying, what if a child come around and the dog decide, look, that child is afraid of me and I'm going to attack. The dog can maul the child to death. And exactly, and under the Dog Act, if a dog kills a human being, that person will be charged, and it will be a considerable amount of money and even to prison, especially if you know that you set the dog on the person. That means it was your intention, so you will be charged for that. But if then you could not have controlled the dog properly, you have to deal with that yourself. In terms of dog injury in small stock, we have received reports as well, and it's just a few weeks ago when my brother and I were teaching Taekwondo to our students, I was telling them about dog attacks, because we have seen where a number of people complain of dogs biting them. And thus I spoke with Dr. Henry at the Agriculture Department, because I decided, well, this year, 2022, the police will work very closely with the Agriculture Department to arrest the situation that we are seeing. Dog attacking livestock, dog attacking human beings, and people just cannot control their dogs. And we want to send that message and also make the appeal. So the message is, if you're a dog owner and you fail to secure your dog, you fail to control your dog well in the street, and we also have reports, but some people will not come forward. People will fight the dogs, but in order to get them bad, they're taken to a farmer's place, unfortunately, and set the dog on the people animal. So we're saying, if you're doing these things and we get the evidence, we will prosecute you. But we are saying to avoid the prosecution, do the responsible thing in terms of, as you would like your dog to live for a long time and be treated well, do not set your dog on other people's animal because you want it to come bad and make your money, which is illegal anyway, and that is cruelty to animal under the Dog Act. So we're saying to these dog owners, do the responsible thing in the legal way and avoid disenchanting the farmers, because we have seen where a farmer reported, I left 10 sheep, and by the time I reach back in the morning, he might have one. You understand? Sometimes none at all. None at all. And well, I really do not know the cost for a sheep, but I believe it's about $100 and something.
Superintendent.
Right.
To have a 45-pound animal, you multiply that by 12.
Exactly.
You have, and depend on the genetics of the animal, because we have Boer breeds here, we have Boer Nubian bricks. Those are animals that give a solid carcass weight. So you'll be running maybe close to 100 pounds in some animals, depending on the genetics. So it's a significant amount of money that they're losing. And
as a matter of fact, I know that not just myself in Division B, but I know the entire police force. I know the commissioner and the other senior officers. We are concerned about these things, because once the public is complaining, well, then there's a concern. And we are there to protect our citizenry. And so therefore, the Commissioner of Police also lent his concern behind this.
I remember at one time, when you owned the dog, you had to license that dog. And the dog had to have a dog license around its neck. What has happened to that? Because at one time there was some legislative framework for, that this is, this dog belongs to so and so, right? But now you don't know who dog is who dog, and you don't know who cat is who cat.
Well, what I will say to you though, under the Dog Act, it clearly states that if a dog commit damage or injury to an animal or someone and it goes into a yard and you follow it, they'll presume that that person is the owner. So that person will have to prove that he or she is not the owner. So because most of the time a dog will go where it lives or where you feed it. So if the dog does not belong to you, do not feed it so it can come. Yes, in peacetime, so to speak, it protects your property. But in wartime, when you attack someone, well, you don't want to have the responsibility. So we are saying to persons, ensure that your dogs are well kept and that you do not allow your dog to be a dog that will just get up and attack people without provocation or defending you, because the law is clear.
They're no longer licensed dogs.
Yes, we licensed dog. It shifted. It used to be the police and then go to Inland Revenue, but I think now the Agriculture Department, the Chief Veterinary Officer has that responsibility. And
are you doing any licensing of dogs at the Agriculture Department, Alicia?
Well, since I was reassigned there last year, I'm not aware of any, but I can speak with Dr. Henry in regards to that. Not too certain.
Because no one will want to own a dog that is wreaking havoc on the community. No one will come and say, well, this is my dog. And that is the issue. And so therefore, since the dog has no owner, I am not agreeing with, and I don't believe in animal cruelty, but I believe that the farmers who are suffering, livestock and crop farmers, these are enemies. And in some way, if an attack is made on their crops and their livestock, it is an attack made really on their livelihood. And they have to have some means of defending themselves.
The law does provide, the law speaks to whether it's a livestock also creating damage to a person's crop. It provides, if you see the animal doing actual damage and you cannot catch it to take it to the pound, and in the dog's case, take it to animal shelter, you can destroy the dog. So some people call in the police. I remember when we had Sugar, when Sugar was king, they were calling another gentleman name, but he was let me tell you, he was a mountain ranger. So he has his gun and we go and shoot it. So most of the time, estate managers will have a shotgun. So you call him to destroy the animal. But with the dogs now, I believe that most farmers will prefer to try to destroy the dog because the dog will attack them. You understand? So you have to defend yourself. You have to defend yourself.
You have to defend yourself?
Yes.
Against the dog attack. I think farmers have enough to contend with monkeys. They already have the monkeys. That's another problem. We are not talking about that here today, but that is a major problem and a major disincentive to farmers to have monkeys just coming and, running amok with their crops and so on. And now they have the problems of dogs to deal with. Now, the legal implications, Superintendent. What are the legal implications?
In terms of the dog committing damage, one, the person will have to bring in someone to assess the damage, and then they can take the person to court on a civil suit. In terms of they having a dangerous dog at large, the Act speaks to the various offenses. So if you fail to secure the animal, there's a penalty for that. So when we look at securing the dog. Once the dog is not secure, a person can be charged, and the magistrate can fine up to trying to find it. But you look at where you can up to maybe 100,000 or more. But then the magistrate has that discretion to go within that boundary. And also too, you find that with the dogs being at large as well, they are dangerous to motorists, because from time to time we will see a dog on the roadside. But let us assume you have a driver who does not want to hit the dog because he or she does not want to kill. What will happen to swerve off the dog, and depending on the speed, you can lose control, run off the road or run into the side of a wall or into another vehicle. So that's another dimension we have to look at when animals are really on the road. So I would not just put it at dog, but dog, sheep, goat, pig, cattle. The cat, well, they don't mind the cat because instantly the cat will die, but a bigger animal, it will damage the vehicle. Yes.
How can technology help, Delisha, do you think, in the fight against praedial larceny?
Like the police often say, if you see something, say something. It helps. It can help. It has helped, and it can continue to help, because there was recently, I think maybe a year ago, there was a video of a non-national who was going around stealing animals around the island, and because of that video, the neighborhood where he lives, someone recognized that an animal was in his yard, because animals, when they're comfortable, you'll know. When they're uncomfortable, you also will know. So it was crying and crying. So because persons would have seen the video, they contacted the department, and Dr. Henry, along with a police officer, went to the area, and we were able to get the animals. It was a goat and a kid. And then maybe later that day, the owner came. The next day, someone came and said they were missing this animal. So we were able to return that animal. So in that instance, social media did help, because everyone is aware that this person is a thief. Of course, well, he's taking people's animals. And of course, when I go out in the field and I interact with the farmers, they have an idea. They have an idea of the persons who are responsible, but they don't have. They know, but they don't have any evidence, because they would have had maybe a run-in with the person before. There are some names that you're hearing from all of the farmers. So we are now trying to be more vigilant, and like the police say, if you see something, say something. If it looks suspicious, say something. Let us investigate it, and if it's not, it's not. But social media is one way we can help. If you're missing, if you notice that your animals didn't come back in, you can call, you can comment, say something. You can put it on, everyone seems to like Facebook, and so the social media and the media can help. And I think programs too, using the media to educate the farmers, because you'd be surprised with a lot of the things that you tell farmers and they said they didn't know. So I think by using the media to educate farmers, as well as social media, is a good way. It's beneficial if we use it more. And
yes, the problem of praedial larceny in the Caribbean is an extremely big one. Yeah. And sometimes I think that, it is underestimated in terms of the impact that it is causing to farmers and the economy on a whole. It is underestimated. But the Food and Agricultural Organization did some assessment, and they said that it is the most extensive among all crimes committed in the sub-region in terms of the number of persons and families affected. So when you are affecting a farmer by stealing his crops, you're affecting his family, you're affecting the entire community. And that 98%, I don't know if the Agricultural Department has ever done a survey to find out how many farmers are affected. But the majority of farmers are affected with people coming and steal their crops. Sometimes they don't come and report it. Because Superintendent David, I think sometimes they feel that there is inaction or that there is nothing being done from the law enforcement standpoint in terms of them getting some sort of a remedy to the problem. But it is one of the biggest disincentives to farmers. Because it's not easy when you've done all of that work. You sow, you nourish your crops, you do all that to bring them to the reaping stage, and then somebody comes and reaps. Sometimes you might be buying things down in the market, and you don't even know you're buying your own produce.
It might sound funny, but it is true. It is true. And it is definitely a problem. In Jamaica, they actually have a praedial larceny prevention coordination program. So the fact that they have that program, it says to you that it's a major problem, and that is something we too here at the Department of Agriculture considering. Like in Superintendent David would have said earlier, working closely. It's our intention to form a task force, I guess, where we can address these problems and bring some relief and satisfaction to the farmers, because we don't want them to feel that we're not paying them any attention, we're not listening. That is one of my goals for 2022, is to form a task force with the police and also health, because in Jamaica, I don't think we don't have to reinvent the wheel. You know, we look at the other islands and what they're doing, and look at the ministries that are important to be on this task force that would give meaningful contribution, and we can go that. But like I said, that is one of my goals, you know, to address that.
Sometimes you see people selling ground produce, and sometimes you don't know them to have any farm or any garden anywhere. So you must raise some sort of a question.
Yes.
Where are they getting this produce to sell? For example, I wouldn't have to question Mr. D'Souza if he's, because I know Mr. D'Souza has his garden, and Mr. D'Souza is very passionate about farming, and that, when he brings his stuff to the market, I know that he's bringing honest stuff to the market to sell, that he has worked hard and produced. But some other people, you really have to question, where are they getting this produce? They have no farms anywhere.
That is a question, as why. Because while the public might complain about the problems, they are part of the problem. And all of us have to bear some responsibility for the entire problem. Because, like you said, Mr. D'Souza, you wouldn't question Mr. D'Souza, but because Mr. D'Souza might be selling his produce at a certain price, and this person who would not have done the work, waking up in the mornings to go to the mountain, to do all that Mr. D'Souza would probably do, is selling far cheaper than Mr. D'Souza. You're going to buy it, not questioning, like you said, the person is not someone, who has a ground, but because the price is cheaper, you tend to go with that. And it's the same thing with livestock, where most farmers here would sell their mutton for $12 or $13. I might be able to get it for $9, but I'm not
trying to get it off of their hand. quickly.
I'm not going to ask, okay, well, I don't know you to be a farmer. How did you get this mutton? No, we just consider we saving a $3, you know? So we are the public is part of the problem too. So all of us have to take a responsibility and recognize that it's not always about cheapness, but if you, like you said earlier, if the person is not somebody you know, you can ask a question, you know.
Yes. So the point I was trying to raise, Delisha, is that there are certain drivers of praedial larceny, and one of it is the under-reporting. Some of it is the inaction when it is reported. You know, some of it is basically insufficient proof of ownership. You know, all of these, and then you don't have enough, you mentioned the farmers, organizations, and so on, coming together to try to see how they can address this problem. Because to have a group of people address the problem, it would be better than just having one farmer trying to battle the problem on their own.
What I've been explaining to my farmers in the east side, we've recently formed East Side Small Ruminant Association, and right after forming that association, we had a farmer who lost 27 of his animals. So you know that this is somebody, this is not just a one, this is somebody who would have had to have a pickup, you know. So I am encouraging the small ruminant farmers to form a group, like you're saying, Leslie, because you get more done united as opposed to just one single person. So group associations and corporations are things I'm encouraging for that reason, and also for other reasons, but mainly that, because you have unity in strength, you know.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Apart from the technology, I remember many years ago we had a dispute. Someone stole an animal, and the owner said, "Look, that's my animal." The man said, "Look, I had this for a long time." So guess what we did? We went down the field of science. DNA. DNA. So the police, when we have these animals in dispute, we also use not only maybe a witness, but we use science. And it worked out well. We were able to give the postmark the animal, charge the other person. Another thing that you mentioned about we call suspected stolen crops. If the police is called and the person says, "Okay, I get it from this place, that place," there is also an offense that we call unlawful possession. So therefore we cannot pinpoint an owner, but you yourself, the possessor, cannot properly indicate how you come by legally. And we have charged persons with that many before, and we're able to get them convicted, but the produce, you know, they're perishable, so we have to destroy them.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
but I think Superintendent, that the legal framework needs to be strengthened. The
yes.
fines and the penalties that are really given for people who commit praedial larceny.
It's too small.
It's too small, it's not enough, and it's not serving as a deterrent. It's not serving as a deterrent. It's a very, very serious crime.
Yes.
And that needs to be strengthened. And if people know, if these thieves know, that if they are caught, that they will be severely penalized under the law with some very hefty fines and even jail terms and all of this kind of a thing,
yes.
It would act as a deterrent, because it is a serious problem, not just here in St. Kitts and Nevis, but throughout the entire Caribbean.
If I could say something on the praedial larceny, in terms of the penalty, a person can, as you said, the fine, he said not exceeding $750, or imprisonment with hard labor for a term not exceeding 6 months. But upon a subsequent conviction and a similar charge, a fine not exceeding $1,500, or to imprisonment with hard labor for a term not exceeding 12 months.
You see, that is too small.
So that is just a debate for...
that is just too small. What is
yes.
750? You steal my sheep. How much money you make from selling my mutton? And so on. You make much more than just $750.
Right. So it's something that we are alive, and I do believe that the powers that be, someone listening and can encourage, plus we have the Farmer Agriculture Department who can really make that representation so that the penalty can actually be a deterrent. Mm-hmm. But for now, we as police force, we cannot go above and beyond what the legislature had stipulated for us to enforce. So we will just encourage and hope that someday that we will have the penalty increase.
Right. Good. Now, Mr. Leader, let's move on to you. The slaughtering of animals. We are looking at livestock in the Bastia Valley area. The slaughtering of animals. And you find what happens is that people slaughter animals in their backyards. Is this allowed? And if it's not allowed, why it is not allowed? Why it should not be done?
Okay, Mr. Williams, let me first thank you for inviting the Health Department to support our colleagues today in relation to this initiative. So we are pleased to be here to support the team that is here today. First of all, that is against the law. To slaughter any animal in backyard is against the law. And the regulation that I'm speaking of, the first one is the offensive trade regulation, which covers the slaughtering of poultry, animals like cows, we have sheep and goat, even dealing with blood and boiling of any products associated with this activity, and storing of hides and gut scraping. So it says that for you to engage in that, you first have to apply to the Chief Medical Officer. And the law stipulates that you have to take all animals to the public abattoir. That was designed for that purpose. So it's against the law for anyone to engage in slaughtering of animal in the back of the yard. Why? For hygienic purposes, first of all. We have an engineered abattoir that was designed for the intended purpose. So it have all the requirements necessary to ensure that the meat meets certain requirements before it comes to the general public. And when you do that in the back of your yard, you are putting the public health at risk. Some years ago we had some issues. Second issue, we're into tourists, a major stake in our economy. Long time ago we used to slaughter in passing around and inspect animals by the side of the road. And there was a report that was written by a tourist saying that it's unethical to engage in that. And so that report came to us, and so we thought it was necessary for us to engage agriculture, and they did construct the abattoir for the intended purpose. So it's against the law. We are trying to protect the environment and the health of the general public. And so the law prohibits you from doing that. There also another law, the market. There's a market, a General Market and Meat Act, that says that the Chief Medical Officer shall designate any area for the slaughtering of meat. And the Bastia Abattoir and the Sandy Point was designated for that purpose. So it's against the law to engage in such activity in the back of the yard.
What about so you spoke about the abattoir and people bringing their animals to be inspected, because it has to be inspected to make sure that the meat, of course, is healthy, yes, and not to be butchered. What about the keeping of livestock in residential areas?
Okay, that too is against the law. So I will speak of the keeping of animals regulation, which stipulate no person shall engage in rearing animals in residential area, and it stipulate the areas where you're not supposed to engage in that activity. And so we have oftenly encouraged the farmers or people engaged in that to approach the agricultural department to lease or acquire a piece of land a quarter mile outside of the village, the law said, that is intended for that purpose. Because what happens is that when you do that in residential area, these animals deface other people's property. One, they damage your property in most instances and cause a public health nuisance in terms of the feces and urine associated with that activity. So sometimes you get this foul smell in the community, and sometimes rainfall, the hide of the animal, the skin get wet and it's dirty and it go up and your brand new house and rub up and, cause a nuisance to your property and destruction. So that in itself, the law prohibits you from rearing animal a quarter mile outside, within the confines of any residential area. So it really should be done in the mountainous areas. And that is the issue associated with livestock in residential areas. Notwithstanding that, damage to vehicle. I'm seeing a lot of vehicles being damaged because of these sheep and goat or cattle run across the street and you're traversing to Basti and you hit them, and then no one want to claim ownership for that. And so that is a public health issue, because a lot of time too, these people end up maybe swerve off the animal and hit a wall and end up at JNF hospital, and then they need medical care. And so it affects the public health system apart from the damage to your property and vehicle, the health of the person. So we are encouraging people to go and acquire a piece of land, whether by lease or purchase, for the intended purpose.
Right. So to solve that issue of people not rearing their livestock in residential areas, the department is encouraging them to acquire land in non-residential areas to rear their animals.
May I add, Mr. Williams, for the intended purpose. The reason why I'm saying that many people try to get land, say, I'm going to put this activity, and when you look, they never follow through. They just want to get a piece of land and no animals are reared there. So it has to be for the intended purpose. And we always tell them, go to agriculture, the extension, let them get a letter or whatever to say that this is what it will be utilized for. Because you would appreciate too, on these land you must have toilet facilities for workers and so, to ensure that it's hygienic, and where the waste go and where they do with the waste for the animals, that it doesn't cause any harm or be injurious to the public health. So that is important.
Right. Now, Mr. Leader, what is the impact of the livestock farming in the Bastia Basin?
Very good. So first of all, the Bastia area is our town, number one. And secondly, it just happened to be where we have the aquifer, the major aquifer in St. Kitts and Nevis. What is happening here is that when you have a large number of animals, they must defecate and urinate, and this can percolate down into the soil and contaminate our water supply. And this can contribute to people going to the hospital sick with diarrhea or sometimes E. coli. Escherichia coli, you can damage your kidneys and lose your kidneys. And so it's important that we don't contaminate the greatest resource, which is our water supply. And a lot of people have their animals grazing in the Bastia area where the aquifer is, and that in itself is a public health issue. And so that is the major problem. So many times when we do our water sampling, we do that annually, every month for the whole year in various communities in the villages. And we are seeing a lot of fecal coliform, which indicate warm-blooded animal defecated there, which can give rise to number E. coli, as I just mentioned, Pseudomonas, number of diseases associated with mankind. And so it is very detrimental to have any fecal matter at all in the basin of Bastia in terms of the aquifer. So that is the major issue we are encountering.
Right. It seems to me as though this has to be a joint discussion between public health and the Department of Agriculture.
Certainly.
So, Ms. Huggins, what is the Department of Agriculture doing to sensitize livestock farmers of the public health issues that are involved?
In regards to what Mr. Leader would have spoken about in the basin, we have a number of farmers, because truth be told, farmers, some persons would start in their backyards, and I don't know, for some strange reason, they don't understand the animals are going to multiply. So where you start with 2, by the end of 2 years, you have 4, 6, 8, and then is when they'll approach the department. So then they're creating a problem. Instead of first going to the department and acquiring the lands, they get the animals and then they put the, what do we normally say? They put the horse before the cart. So then we have to now find lands for these persons. In regards to the aquifer, there are a number of farmers in that area. I have already relocated one thus far. We are trying to get areas for these farmers. So this farmer who resides in Newtown now has to do farming in Atleys. So we're in the process of doing that. There are maybe 1 or 2 other farmers that we are currently preparing lands in another location to relocate these farmers. We have spoken to them. Well, like I said, we relocated one already. And we are having discussions with the others. We have already expressed that it's a problem, and we are addressing it. We're in
Just to support that, Mr. Williams, also this can be a nuisance to the residents, Bastia and the community. So we have a regulation, the nuisance regulation, which includes an act not warranted by law or any omission to discharge in legal duty which acts as omission cause inconvenience or interference with the personal comfort. And so the law gives us authority that we can serve you a notice. Just last week we received a complaint in Parsons. Somebody just bring a pig and put it to the fence of somebody's premises, and it was causing a nuisance. And I asked the officer to serve a notice, and refusal to remove the animal, the matter will be taken to court, which the fine is 1,500, summary conviction in the magistrate court. So we have been dealing with issues like these associated and have served several notices. But as you correctly said, it has to be dealt with jointly between agriculture and health and the police, this task force too, so that we can solve and come up with a solution that is conducive to all.
Yeah, some of these animals are very noisy as well.
Noise pollution, which is the next issue again. Yes.
Sure, go right ahead.
I would like if our friend from the Agriculture Department can also chip in. I'm just here looking at the Public Pound Act. Our public pound, how is it? Do we still have it functional? And are the persons taking animals there? But I think that the public pound too also seeks to address some of these concerns. So when we find wandering animals, they can be taken to the pound. A notice go out. The owner go and collect them if they want them back or not. The act speaks to how you can dispose of the animal if the owner does not come up, especially if it commit damage. It can be sold, and the person who was injured can be compensated from that, and the balance go back to the pound. And also to, apart from the pound too, I don't know if you had it on your paper, but in terms of what you call it again, I know we used to branding, but not branding, tagging, right? Tagging. Because that again too also would reduce the headache of finding or locating the owner. So I know Dr. Henry and I we spoke of these things. So these are things as we're going forward, as we spoke, that can also help. I know that we spoke of them in the past, but I think that because now we are looking at food security, we really have to try to get that extra effort to ensure that we maintain our food security.
We're going to go to the phone lines with the rest of the time that we have left. Well, we continue our discussion.
Yes.
The numbers to call are 466 26 66, 662 8674, 662 8674, 767 4765, 767 4765, and the overseas number is 1239 645 4500. So that is 1239 645 4500. We welcome your calls. Right. Now, one of the things that might be driving a lack of reporting when it comes to praedial larceny is the whole issue of the land tenure, and proof of ownership of land. What do you think, Delisha? People might be having their gardens and planting on land that they don't own. The land is not theirs. And so therefore, when somebody comes and steals your crops, when you go to report it, you have to produce evidence of land ownership. And if you don't have that evidence of land ownership, that's another issue.
But if you, in areas where you don't own land that you're on, I don't think that should stop you from reporting. If you're in an area and you don't own the land, nobody came to claim the land, there's some people who would allow you to use the land until they're ready for the land. I know of a number of instances where persons are doing planting in areas that they don't own. They would have sought permission from the owner. But in a case where I don't see, if you're planting on a land, I don't think it would be a large number of persons doing that. Most of the persons who might be planting, they might be planting on government land that they didn't have permission to plant on, but that still would not give them a reason not to report.
Working for you, good afternoon. Hello? Good afternoon. Good afternoon, caller. Can you speak a little? Yes, we're hearing you now.
Leroy.
Yes, I'm hearing you now.
Leroy.
Yes, sir, I'm hearing you.
Hello, Leroy.
I'm hearing you.
Leroy.
Seems like we're having some problem.
I can't hear you.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Leroy. Somebody is talking, Jay?
Hello?
Hello, Leroy.
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, somebody is on the ear, man.
Right. I'm sorry that I lost that caller. There seems to be some technical issue. Ms. Huggins, you were...
I don't think that's a reason not to report. What we're experiencing a lot of, like I said earlier, persons are putting the cat before the horse. They get the animals and then they come to the department. So right now we are trying to see, we have lands in half-retreat where we're trying to put most of our farmers. But what our culture is, oh, I live tongue, I can't go down there. But the reality is, we cannot give you land from one of the reasons that Mr. Leader just explained. We cannot have farming in certain areas. So we have to put you in areas where you don't live. But it's about setting up a proper structure and a good farming system where you can secure and even set up an area where you can stay on the farm for some period of time to secure whether it's livestock or your plants. But I don't think you farming on land that you don't own should a reason for you not to report. I think the underreporting is as a result, to me, more as a result of inaction. They feel that, when you go to are you going to the court? Go to the court, you got to go back. We were talking earlier, Mr. Leader and I, about the time, the time that it consumes to go to the court.
Yes.
So I think that discourages people, the length of time for these matters to be addressed. I think that is more what this, a turn off, you know. And then some with the dog attacks, most persons, you know, would not own the dog. No one owns the dog. Once it does something like that, it doesn't. It no longer has an owner. So nobody wants to claim that dog. But I think it's the court process is what's more of a turn off and a discouragement to farmers.
Right. Superintendent, what are some prevention tips, some praedial larceny prevention tips that you can give to the public?
We know that it will be very difficult to set up certain security measures around your farm because of the location, and it might be very large. However, persons can spend a little bit more time on their premises. You also have some cameras that can work remotely. You charge it and you rest it down, and there are ones that you have to look very good to find it. So they can do that. Some people put dogs, but most of the time the dogs are for the monkeys, and if you put it for human beings, well, obviously when you go back you might make a dog die because they're going to poison it. Now, we touched on something earlier, which is what we are encouraging. Persons who do not know of someone being a farmer or someone who purchase wholesale and sell retail should not purchase from this person, and they should report these persons as suspected of being selling or in possession of stolen goods. And like I said, we dealt with it before and we will continue to do so, but now we are looking at the proactivity of the victims and of possible persons who want to get things cheap, but you should be able to tell yourself, look, I do not know Mr. David to be a farmer. I know he's a man always up and down the road doing stupidness, so therefore I am not going to buy anything from him. So let me call the police because I suspect that what he's doing here. And I just want to read something from the praedial larceny act, and it says suspected person means any person who has or has in his or her possession or under his or her control in any place any praedial produce in such circumstances as shall reasonably cause any police officer or authorized person to suspect that such produce has been stolen or unlawfully obtained. So, upon the report of that person, give us reasonable grounds to suspect that they are stolen. And then, again too, because we have arrested persons who pick people coconuts off the trees. And if we see you coming from a farm area, and you have a bag and we stop you and we find potatoes, we know that there's a potato farm up there. We ask you a question and you cannot satisfy our questions that you had a farm up there. That too will be taken into custody. The law give us the procedure in which we take. And then whilst we have that person in custody and a farmer cry out, we can go look at it, and then the farmer might be able to say, okay, I sell red potatoes, and these are red potatoes. And you know, so they're properly identifying their property. And we have had convictions like that. But most of the time when it comes to crop, once persons are not available to say they're the owner, we normally charge for unlawful possession, and we do get convictions.
And sometimes it's not even the farming on a large scale. Sometimes you have your backyard crops and things like that. You have your avocado tree, what we call the pear tree.
Yes.
And I remember one day going home. Apparently, I wasn't supposed to go home so early. But I went home. I said, let me leave work a bit early. I went to the supermarket and I said, I'm going home. And when I go home, somebody is in my pear tree. It's a pear tree, picking my pear.
You forget you gave the person permission.
I didn't give it. And when I asked them, who sent you into my tree? Why are you in my tree? He said, somebody sent me to pick them. I said, but this is not your yard. This is not your place. What you doing in my tree?
Coconut,
yes.
The coconut, the jelly water. Yes. We have a chat, and when I sent the photo for this show, yes, a lot of the persons in the chat started to talk about we need to deal with the people who sell jelly water, because
that's what they're doing.
One person said they have, I think it's 20 trees, and they can't get to drink one jelly off of the tree because every time these people, they just go. Some people suggested that we need to put some restrictions on them, make them get a help. So what the food handlers permit and so.
On your yard.
Yes, that's what
They
another person said. They monitor you to see
how
when
your
you're not
things
there.
are growing, and when
And
when
they
they're
go.
ripe, and when they can pick, and they come,
Yes.
and when you're not there, into your yard, and they take your things. Those things can't be right.
That's why it's important that the farmers use technology to buy some of these devices I spoke of. May not be expensive, but they can surely produce some good visuals. So you just know what you want, you get it and you rest it down, and you will catch person. Another thing too that I will like to say, you persons out there who do these things, try not to blame too much on poverty, because the same energy you exert to steal person's property and go and sell it, it means you can plant your own. It means you can go down the bay and set your own trap or throw your line out and catch your own fish rather than another person's fish pot. I know we're not dealing with fisheries, but
Yeah, it's a type. It's a
it's
sort
also
of,
part of
it is a sort of mentality. You want
Yes.
to reap where you have not sown.
right.
You want to reap where you have not done the hard work. You want to reap where you have not put in the sacrifice. And it's a sort of a culture that we have today.
Yes.
It is a culture we have today. You want to reap and you did not sow anything. You want to benefit, you did not contribute anything. It's a sort of a lazy, sort of a culture, one where people think that they can come by things easily. One where they think that they can ride on the backs of others and their hard work and their sacrifice for absolutely nothing. And it's wrong.
It and not even think anything of it, because I remember one time a friend of mine was saying, I think one of those utility persons would have gone to do some work on their house, and they had a pomegranate tree, and the guy who went to do whatever work from whichever company removed the pomegranate off the tree, and the owner was looking at the pomegranate, just monitoring it for when it reached the mature stage to pick it, and they were really upset about it. But it's a culture. You go in a yard, you see something, you just pick it, but not thinking, the consequences, or maybe the owner might be looking at it just the way you're looking at it, but it's very casual. We do these things casually without even understanding the consequences.
I know some time ago that working for you, good afternoon.
Okay, good afternoon, Leslie and company, I'm back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm listening to the program as usual, and a lot of things that have been said there, I like the question that you're asking them, but a lot of the answers we're getting, especially from the lady, all your clock. The lady said that she don't like the idea of people taking the law in their hand and killing animals that they catch destroying their livestock. Well, I don't agree with what she said with that, because the animals they're not supposed to be out there destroying people's goods. And so therefore, since the law is there and nobody enforcing the law to kill them animals and keep those animals from eating people's livestock, people have to do what they got to do. And let me tell you this, they take me about dog walking up and down on the street free. I've been talking about that there for years. And there is laws on the book that nobody dog supposed to be free roaming the streets. Dog supposed to be in a kennel or even toy or fence. You cannot find the dog nowhere in the international world of America on the street unless the owner has the dog under a leash. And so therefore the law here in St. Kitts Nevis, they're supposed to make sure that clean up all them dogs who are free running on the road. Because you're supposed to be able to walk in the main street without dog molesting you. And when dog bite, they don't have no owner. And I don't know the reason why they don't enforce the law. They're going to wait until somebody get in trouble for their own rights, and then they're going to say, okay, we're going to do this and do that. That's not supposed to be. And then in the ground, when people plant the food, you got monkey with long tail destroying the people in food, and you got monkey without no tail going in people ground and take up the people in product and go sell them. When somebody can thief a cattle and they gonna sell the two legs cost more than $700. So $700 penalty for somebody who thieves somebody's animal, that is nothing to talk about. And that is the reason why they're still thieving, because there is no penalty to deter them. And they need to step up on these laws. Step up. Until somebody thieves the animal and do them what other people been suffering from, they ain't gonna know nothing about it. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much for your call. I would agree with him that the laws need to be strengthened. The legislative framework needs to be beefed up because, as I mentioned earlier, how it is right now with the legislative framework, it is not a deterrent. It is not deterring these thief. We call them thief, crop thief. Thief is thief. It doesn't matter whether you come into my yard and you take 2 of my pear, or you're going to somebody's yard, as Ms. Huggins was saying, and you take their pomegranate. You did not ask. Once you did not ask for something, permission from the owner, you are stealing. I think people create this dichotomy in their minds in terms of what is stealing and just taking up. That do you know? Oh, I just take to guava, man. Oh, I just take to pear. But did you ask permission for it? If you didn't ask permission for it, then you are stealing. They're trying to justify their actions.
Yes. I will
but then they might tell you, oh, I was hungry.
Yes.
Just say.
Yes.
I understand. Yes, I understand their action, but I'm not saying do not do it, or I understand, but me personally, I am not one for destroying the animals.
The action really is that you can't. We understand the frustration, the anger, and all of that, but you have to do something to protect.
And I truly understand that, but
so it's two sides.
Yes, it is
of the same. Mm-hmm.
The law says that the owner of the property must see the animal doing actual damage. And it reminds me many years ago when a man had his garden damaged by sheep the day before. The next day he sees some sheep going up the road and he just take a match and start cutting up the animals. We had to arrest the man because he did not see. And the law says you must see. And that's the problem. The animals can't say, yo, hey, I was not in the yard yesterday. So yeah, that's a problem. But I want to say something to the caller about
yes.
Thing. I'm looking at dog injury or death, right? And it says here, this is Dog Act, chapter 15. If a dog injures a person, the owner or keeper commits an offense and is liable an indictment to a fine not exceeding $5,000 or to a term not exceeding 5 years. And it goes on if the dog maul a person, right? The penalty is even more severe. But what I would like to say with the dog, though, is that sometimes when people come to the station, they will say, I just want you to talk to them. And that will be the issue. And I also want to let the public know that once a dog bites someone, the vet will come in and the vet will determine whether or not the dog will stay alive or die. So it is best that people keep the dog if they love them, because once this happens, and this is the drive that we're going to take this year, the vet will be involved and that decision will be made, because we cannot afford to have our public being terrorized by dangerous dogs.
We agree. Is there a call? What? No. Right. We need before you go, Mr. Leader. We need. Yes, there's a call. Working for you. Good afternoon.
Yeah. Good afternoon. Let's try again.
Yes.
and show you share an experience with you all. Some years ago there, not too long, I was on my way going home. And when I got home, I passed two gentlemen standing by the side of the road, and they were there conversing. And when I almost reached where I live, there was a dog in front of his gate, one of those big breed dogs, and he was coming after me. He was coming after me, that's why. And I bent down and I take up a piece of block. And when he see me take up the block, the owner for the dog shouted from where he was. He said, yo, what? I said, what? I said, you see what in the street they're coming after me? I am in the government road and I'm supposed to be the attack boy in the dog. And he said, okay, don't kill me dog. I said, all right man, throw your dog. Well, the next day I give a gentleman a sale with two back and neck. I eat one and I give the dog the other one. And I was able to walk the street free. No more dog come after me after the back and neck. So people got to do what they have to do to protect themselves. Because dog bite ain't easy. Dog bite cause house and land. And when dog bite you, they ain't gonna own no. But when they're bad and they could fight the dog and kill it and eat up 10 goat. Oh well, by me dog body kill 10 goat up there. So therefore the government again supposed to make sure that people license the dog, keep the dog out the street, keep them out of the road, man. What are you doing? I enforce the law. The laws are there. Why you got them on the book for? Just to sell that there? That ain't good enough. That is not good enough. Thank you.
Yes, and in the absence of stronger laws and so on, you're going to find that this thing keeps happening. He made the comparison, or he drew the contrast between, we here in the Federation and some other countries, where I know that they have very strong dog laws. For example, in London and so on, you take your dog walking and you can be fined if your dog litters and all that sort of a thing, and you just leave it there in the public. You have to actually, they walk with a bag, their dog bag, and they shovel it up and they put it in the bag, and then they also have these bins and things like that. You can put the dog litter and all of that sort of a thing. So, yes,
Mr. Williams, if I may, since we are on the issue with dog, we have been receiving a number of complaints at the health department too. Apart from the larceny, these dogs are a nuisance to the residents. Some people have like 6 and 7 dogs in their yard, defecating, urinating, and not cleaning it. Just yesterday we had a big issue with that. So if you are to engage in rearing of animals for whatever purpose, you have to clean it, because that in itself is a public health nuisance. And so sometimes the health officer will go to this person to explain and even serve a notice, and they're getting arrogant. But you cannot at no time inconvenience your neighbor because you want to rear lots of dogs in your residence. So apart from the stealing, there are public health nuisance in some cases to the residents, and these things must be addressed. And also my colleague was explaining to me too as well that some persons are bringing animals from the rural areas to the abattoir after they have been slaughtered without an inspection from health. And they are telling the abattoir persons that someone from health inspected it already, which is not the case. And so I want to appeal to the general public that the public abattoir is the only designated area for slaughtering of animal where we can carry out post-mortem and ante-mortem inspection. You're putting yourself at grave risk to eat any animal that has been slaughtered in the backyard. You're putting your livelihood at risk. And so we would appeal to you for your own health and safety to follow the recommendation. It's in your best interest. As you can see, we are confronted with a pandemic already, and we don't want to have an instance which came out, supposedly according to WHO, out of animals, the same in a wet market. And so you have to be so careful what you do in the back of your yard and take it to the appropriate place for slaughtering. That is very important. So I told my colleague that that is not the case. I called 3 officers, asked them if they were engaged in this activity. They said never. And yet this person is telling the persons here, my colleague, yes, it was inspected by health. That is certainly not the case. We only inspect animal at the public abattoir, or if we have an emergency slaughter, let's say an animal get knocked down or somebody by that instance. Okay, yes, he said you have a call.
Working for you, good afternoon.
Working for you, that's why.
Good afternoon, jam down.
Good afternoon. I hear in the penthouse and I saw blood for culture, you hear? That's why police has dropped the ball with these dogs. I can remember an officer used to live in Baker's Corner near Marga Dog. Every 10 o'clock in the night, any stray dog on the road, he shoot them. The law is there.
Came and changed the number of that. It spoke to we call them shelters for dogs. So if dogs walk in the streets and so forth, in the past sometimes people would say the police should go, but now you have designated people for that. But however, until those persons probably come on stream and sort of the things, there'll be certain things that will be omitted. But at the same time though, thus far the dogs that you may see from time to time on the street, they're more of the one that cause nuisance with the garbage, but attacking people, no. But there are many people who are faithful, especially if you see a pack of dogs. I mean, if you see 5 dogs there, you say, boy, instead of going that way when I'm jogging, I'm going back this way. So what I do tell people in terms of having a little knowledge of dogs, if you go in, running and you see the dog, stop, run, walk. If any come, you swoop down like you're taking up a stone. Most of the time they run back. But then you have to know strategy. But when it comes to these pit bull, German Shepherd, Rottweiler, I believe that you should just turn back.
But to support you, Inspector David, those dogs in the street as well, that is defacing people's property. They're pulling down your garbage, blocking up the drains, the garbage from your bins, and they're throwing down them in the drains and making the place look soiled, dirty.
Yes.
And so it is important that we try to control all these different various facets in the interest of public health and safety.
Yes.
Because you may imagine you left your refuse there for the truck to take it and you reach home and all the garbage is on the ground. You have a call.
Right, working for you, good afternoon. Working for you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yes, greetings to you. Now, I guess the superintendent might have went to the laws with certain things. However, I know there's some persons have some concern, but the law is clear. The animals sometimes must be caught doing actual damage. So, I guess someone asked about the stray dog, but they're just walking on the road and they're chasing you. I mean, there's a law also with stray animals, but if they're just wild, nobody claiming them, technically they belong to the state. So that's the next thing. If you have a beast, as guess the superintendent might say, they term them ferocious and dangerous beasts. The law says how to deal with them. The law also states, I guess the superintendent will say, if somebody catch an animal doing actual damage, the person can either capture, take, and do certain things like that. I will leave the superintendent to explain that to you. However, I would like persons to understand the police doesn't make laws. The parliamentarians who elected, they're the one who make the laws. The police enforce the laws. And also, at the end of the day, yes, maybe the police might be dropping the ball in something, but if the police are not there every time when something happens, if somebody did not report a crime, the police do not know something happened. So, I hope the superintendent bring out that, even though we would like them to do more, I would just also want persons to understand that if you see something happen, you report it. But there are a lot of persons who say, oh, I don't want to get in any problems. I feel better. Then again, they're asking sometimes, I know persons might want laws in certain aspects. You know, every place have their culture and their beliefs and their things. Laws come in to control certain things. And therefore, the dogs that might be doing damage and persons stealing things, sometimes again, some persons want to justify, oh, the person hungry. And the person that, but you know, there's no difference between, you go ask the superintendent, he will tell you. There's no difference between stealing 5 cents and $5 million or $5,000. The penalty might be thing, but the law says it's a crime. So he could go more into that with you. But at the end of the day, over the years, if you look to society, and this is where changes come to society, and then the approach to prosecute might even change because of the reluctancy of doing certain things. Oh, he just hungry, man, but people forgetting he commit a crime, as somebody said before, until it happens to them. So at the end of the day, sometimes what is happening is actually societal fault. there. And if you put that into context, I believe a lot of you might know the Bible. In the last days, wrong become right and right become wrong. So I think this is what is happening right now. Persons want to justify wrong because of something, but wrong is wrong. That's my contribution. Thanks much.
For your call. We're out of time. We don't have much time left, so I would ask you to, if you have anything to say before we leave, you can say it now. Ms. Huggins?
Yes, that's why I'd like to just thank you and the other panelists for giving us this opportunity to address this matter. Like I said earlier, these are matters that are seriously affecting our farmers in St. Kitts, and I'm asking everyone to, if you see something, say something, and let us all take responsibility for our actions and the actions of our dogs and other animals. Superintendent David would have spoken about the ear tagging. That is something that I'm encouraging farmers to do, but most farmers are a bit reluctant for one reason or another. Some because if the animals destroy anybody, they don't want to be identified. But I'm encouraging it because for a number of reasons. It helps with traceability. If your animal is lost, we find it, we know whose animal it is. Also, if your animal was treated, we have the record to show what it would have been given and different things. So it's about traceability for me, as a livestock extension officer. So you'll be hearing more about the ear tagging campaign and other activities in regards to extension for small ruminants.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Huggins.
Yes, I would like to thank you again, Mr. Williams, for inviting us here to discuss this very important topic, which the department is in full support in terms of our colleagues. In wherever possible, we can assist in that. Just like to appeal to the general public, you can see that this pandemic has brought to the fore the issue of health, which is very important to all of us. And so we are here to empower you. If you're going to buy animals, please ensure that it went through the proper means, that is the abattoir. Do not engage in purchasing any carcass or animals from people who are not certified, one. And two, rearing of animals in the communities, especially in the Bastia Basin and in the rural communities, is against the law. You must seek permission from the Ministry of Agriculture to get the appropriate lands designated for this purpose. You cannot inconvenience your neighbor and expect to be right. So we are in it with you. We are here to support you in your initiative, but you need to do what is right, and we are here to correct the wrongs. So if it used to happen, please discontinue and go through the appropriate channel. I thank you for your support here this afternoon.
Okay. Mr. David?
Thank you, Leroy. Well, Happy New Year to everyone. As we know that we are now on our 12th day, but I do trust that everyone experiencing a good day thus far. It is always a pleasure for me to be here representing the Commissioner and the entire Royal St. Christopher Nevis Police Force, and that the police are giving information pertaining to safety and security. And today we were looking at food security. And I like to say to persons, secure your dogs, secure your animals, prevent them from wandering about, as just earlier mentioned, in the Bastia area, what they can do to the water supply. We are also letting persons know that the community have been experiencing, whether they've been bitten by a dog or a dog bit their animal and kill it, and it caused problems. And what I want the public to know, that once this report comes to the police, the chief veterinary officer will know about it, and your dog is likely to be put down. So if you want your dog to survive a long time, keep it chained up, keep it penned up, or keep it fenced in your yard. In terms of livestock, you want them as well so that you can sell, ensure that you keep them off the road, that they wouldn't get struck by a vehicle, they damage people's crop, someone will destroy it because they might be caught in actual damage, or they might just sit and do it something because they feel like that was there yesterday. Finally, report. report. Thank you very much, and do enjoy.
Thank you very much. And this is not meant to open up another debate. It's a rhetorical question. Who owns all these stray dogs? Now, thank you very much to all three of you for being on the panel today and for sharing on something so important, praedial larceny, robbing farmers of a livelihood, affecting the economy. And it is too much of a problem, and we need to tackle it. The dog attacks and the other problems that dog creates, the stray dogs and so on. So we have to be more responsible in terms of how we look after our animals, our dogs, but at the very same time, the law, the legal framework has to be strengthened as well where that is concerned to prevent the praedial larceny and these dog attacks. And of course, Mr. Leader spoke about the public health issues with respect to slaughtering of animals in the backyard, and he gave you advice in terms of what should be done and so on. So thank you to all of you. Thank you very much to all of our listeners to today's program and our callers. We continue to appreciate you from week to week. Next week, we will be back with another Working for You program. Until then, I am Les Roy Williams.